Be's second hiveCONNECT webinar. This one is about getting the most out of Microsoft Business Premium licensing. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I thought it was worth doing a quick sort of introduction on everyone on today's webinar. I'm Luke. I'm one of the Microsoft Certified Technical Consultants and I work with SMEs in and around the Bristol area. I work with our clients to make sure they're utilising the right technology for their business and align with Cyber Essentials as an assessor and cyber advisor. We've also got David on today's webinar. He's another one of our Microsoft certified technical consultants. He specializes in supporting modern work clients who've already moved to the cloud or in fact even on their journey to the full cloud environment. He's also a cyber advisor and a cyber essentials assessor. And Drag is also on today's webinar. Drag is our accounts director. He's got extensive experience in working with customers that use legacy on-premise environments and transitioning them to the cloud, ultimately resulting in a serverless environment. He's a cyber advisor and a Microsoft certified expert as well. And throughout today's webinar, there's going to be a lot of references talking about businesses that may still be relying on their legacy on-premise environment and how Business Premium, is a great license for you to make that transition to the cloud. So the reason for today's webinar is there's a bit of a challenge that we're seeing in the market at the moment, and it's that many SMEs are relying on business standard, but miss out on critical security and management tools because they don't have business premium, or in fact, maybe they do have business premium, but don't fully utilize all the available features. So what we're seeing in the market at the moment is that there's a lot of third-party tools amongst SMEs, and that's simply down to margin for the managed service provider, or potentially that provider not having the skill set to actually implement the tools provided by Microsoft. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk about the business premium license, the core features that you should be looking at to use within your business. So I thought it's probably best to start off and explain what is business premium. So Microsoft provides a variety of licensing options for the Microsoft 365 platform. And selecting an appropriate one can be quite sort of challenging at times. Quite commonly, we've seen business standard rolled out across a lot of SMEs, and some are making the transition to business premium. So it's now becoming commonly used by small and medium enterprises for their Microsoft licensing. So if you think of business premium, a lot of people just think it's Microsoft apps and emails. It actually offers a lot more additional features beyond business standard. And the reason for using business premium is it gives you access to these enterprise grade device management tools and security tools as well. So businesses that are maybe in the position of having an on-premise environment at the moment and are looking to transition to a cloudless environment, your business premium licensing essentially gives you the necessary tools and features that you need to remove the reliance on your old hardware. And also, we're in 2025 now, so there's a lot of businesses that offer the hybrid model. So particularly, previously, you'd rely on a VPN to maintain connection to your domain controller on site. But now, with everything being hybrid, utilizing the cloud is particularly the best way to manage devices that are off-site. So just a sort of little idea for you in terms of pricing wise, there's around about £7 to £8 difference between business standard and premium. So it's around about £18 per month. And if you're a business premium user and you're licensed for not-for-profit, licensing is around £4.20 per month as well. So there's a few different options here. One of the questions we get commonly asked is, can we upgrade from business standard to business premium? And the answer to that question is yes, you can upgrade from business standard to premium. Microsoft are really pushing SMEs to upgrade their licenses. So why upgrade? Well, the threat landscape's changed quite significantly. We're seeing a lot more phishing, ransomware, and account breaches. And Microsoft has essentially designed the business premium license as an all-in-one solution for modern security and compliance. So it's really a license that they're pushing for SMEs to utilize. So throughout today's webinar, we're going to talk through some of the essential features that you should be using or considering as part of your business premium license. like I've already sort of mentioned, we're seeing that a lot of these features go unadopted at the moment in the market. And obviously, of course, providing these features are configured by an expert team, you know, a Microsoft Solutions partner, of course, always going to be best placed to make sure that you're getting the full potential from these features with your license. So we're going to jump straight into it. Drag's going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Defender for Endpoint now. So Drag, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you, Luke, for that. So yeah, I'll be discussing Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So before we kind of dive into it, it's worth clarifying that Microsoft Defender isn't just one product. So I do get asked, Microsoft Defender, that's the antivirus. Well, no, that's the product they do, but they also use a whole family of the security suites. So I'm going to be talking about Endpoint, but there are other kind of suites as well. So you've got Office 365. So obviously Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, that protects devices. You've got Defender for Office 365, that protects your emails, which Dave will touch upon later. And there are other ones like Cloud for Apps, Identity, and Cloud. So there are other features, but we'll be covering Endpoint mainly and Office 365. So what is Defender for Endpoint? So Defender for Endpoint, in a nutshell, is an antivirus product for Microsoft. It's an enterprise-grade antivirus that protects your kind of laptops, desktops, servers, mobile devices from kind of modern cyber threats. It does come like in three kind of cores. It does like prevention attacks. It also detects suspicious activity and also helps respond quickly as well. So with the prevention, it stops attacks before they kind of start. It has built-in antivirus and anti-malware with real-time kind of protection. It does behavior-based detection for unknown threats. Does exploit protection and attack surface reduction, to block kind of malicious actions. So like macro abuse, script misuse, and kind of credential theft. So Defender for Endpoint isn't just a kind of reactive element to it. It does actively kind of try to block paths where attacker will kind of normally kind of use. So the other part, which I kind of like even more so, is the detection and response. So you might have heard of EDR. So EDR stands for Endpoint Detection and Response. So Endpoint being obviously the antivirus. So what is it? It's something that's anything suspicious that happens on the endpoint, EDR basically kicks in. So you have your antivirus, which is your just normal antivirus. Then you have an EDR, which is an additional feature that you have to enable. So by default, just to let everyone know, you don't have that enabled. You have to go into your tenant, configure it properly, and set policies, what actions it takes. If it detects a high threat, does it isolate it? Does it put it into like a sandbox? Does it just alert you on a service desk? There's loads of things, but EDR does kind of continuous monitoring for abnormal behavior. So it does automatic investigation, like backend it uses AI. And also you can see the attack timelines, exactly what happened and when. So it gives you kind of visibility in the attack when it first happened to its last point. So that's a very good bit of feature that I would strongly recommend that you guys look into. So some examples, people be asking me, what does EDR do? Give me some examples. So one example would be a user clicks a phishing link on an email. It's got a hidden link. It opens up PowerShell script and it launches in the background, and then it will try and do a series of tasks where it opens up Outlook or Word, and then it tries to connect to like an unknown URL or IP address. So when this happens, Defender for Endpoint immediately alerts us via PowerShell behavior abnormally. It logs a ticket on our service desk, and then one of our teams will go onto it and then investigate what actually has happened with that device. Depending on the severity, if it's a high risk, it automatically blocks it. But again, this has to be configured. It's not out of the box. You do have to configure it and set alerts up. So for our clients that have this feature with us, everything gets forwarded over to our service desk team. So to basically look at further investigation. Another example would be network scan for compromised endpoints. So an attacker will try to gain access to a compromised device, and they'll do a port scan. So they'll scan what's on the network. how many servers, how many domain controllers, open ports, any vulnerability machines. So as soon as it does a port scan, you will get a flag up saying low, medium risk. This machine's doing something untoward. It's scanning the network, just flagging this for your attention. That gets logged, and then you would investigate that issue. Another good one would be, so ransomware. So a typical thing, it would be someone clicks a dodgy link, and then you start to encrypt all your files. If it's doing mass changes, so it's unusual spike in modifications in the actual files itself, that will be an alert to say, hang on, something's happening untoward on this machine. It's encrypting, hence all the file changes happen very quickly, one after the other. This is classed as ransomware behavior, and it will automatically block that device from communicating to the outside world. And then we've seen this before, where then the end user can no longer work, and then they're like, what's happening? And then we get a ticket to say, hey, X has happened, just a heads up, we need to get access to your machine. And then we will go to site and obviously remediate the issues. So there are integrations. So you can integrate it within Microsoft 365 Defender portal. So I think before it used to be Security Center. Was that what was called before, Luke? Was it Security Center, I think?
I think so. Yeah, I think they.
I think it's Security Center. Yeah.
Don't need to change the names from time to time. So
yeah,
it always catches us out, doesn't it?
So yeah, I think so. Now it's Defender portal. So it's like a single pane of glass where all your data goes into, and then you can look at holistically all your machines that you manage from all endpoints, and that's where your central point is. So it does work well with Intune as well. So it does a compliance and onboarding devices. So it's quite a good feature. Like I said, it's not enabled by default, and there are other flavors to it as well, as I touched upon Office 365, which Dave will touch upon in a minute. But yeah, great product, but do make sure you invest in enabling EDR. So yeah, Dave, I think it's over to you now with Office 365.
I think, Drag, just quickly jump in there quickly. When we talk about Defender for Endpoint, you've probably spent best part of 5 minutes talking about all these features and the advanced protection that it actually gives devices. Like, I'm sure one of the common things that you hear amongst SMEs is they turn around and say, well, we've already got antivirus, so we don't need to change. But like, you can see just by what you've spoken about how far more advanced that this enterprise grade level of protection Microsoft's given you as part of your licenses versus something off the shelf that you can buy for a subscription. And do you see that when you speak to clients or prospects and you mention Defender for Endpoint, that they're receptive to change, or do they sort of want to stick with the current antivirus that they've got? Because obviously there's always going to be an element of cost involved here, isn't there?
So we've onboarded a couple of clients with Premium already, and they have other third-party antivirus implemented. So they just have an antivirus. So they don't have an EDR function to the antivirus. They just have the antivirus itself. So from that example, they're already paying for the service. They're paying for Premium. So we're like, okay, well, just to let you know, you're paying for 2 packages of antivirus. You don't need this package. And then they are sometimes asked questions like, well, is it as good as what we're paying for? Okay. And I was like, yes, 100% is as good, if not better, because it interlinks with your 365 ecosystem. So not only do you have the endpoint for antivirus, but as I said, the EDR function as well, I would say enable that. You can have other third-party antiviruses and EDR, but why not just funnel that into your 365 ecosystem? It makes no sense. Before, as you know, Luke, to have all these extra kind of packages, you had to buy Intune separately, you had to buy antivirus separately. It started getting so expensive. Even with the anti-phishing, the Office 365, you had to buy an additional package just to have all these extra securities. It wasn't cost effective for businesses to actually jump on that kind of like bandwagon. But with 365 Premium, you get all these bundled in. So you get the Intune, you have Autopilot, you've got Defender for antivirus, you've got for Office 365, you've got so many more packages. But we do see a lot of clients, prospective clients mainly, that don't know too much about what they're paying for. So if they do have a standard license and we explain the benefits of moving over to Premium, quite 9 times out of 10, as long as you can relay that information and show what real value that they will see long term, which is mainly security and compliance, they are on board from the outset.
I think the key thing to take home here, and as we get more, into this webinar and we talk some more about the features, is that if you're already around about sort of, don't hold me to exact figures, but around about £10 a month for a business standard license, and then you upgrade to business premium and you get access to Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365, which Dave's going to touch on in a minute, and all these other tools, that does offset the cost, and you'll probably make a saving, but also it's an enterprise grade solution, and this is the license that SMEs should be using to build the foundations of their IT on, to be honest. So yeah, no, thanks for that, Drag. That was a really good insight. And David's now going to talk a little bit about Defender for Office 365, because like you've already sort of mentioned, it does tie into the whole sort of suite, really. So David, you'll jump straight into it, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Just a little point to kind of reference as well is obviously I don't want to jump around too much or focus too much on this, but obviously it's the management aspect as well. So having your kind of AV and EDR within the 365 ecosystem means it's one portal to manage all, rather than having multiple portals dotted all over the place, which again we've seen. But we can circle back to that. Defender for Office 365. So essentially, with a business standard license, you get some degree of email filtering and kind of spam protection built in, but it's kind of their most basic offering, and for the large part, it doesn't do most of the things that most SMEs would want to accomplish by having some form of spam filtering in place. So normally what we see is when you take on a client with a business standard license, they'll normally supplement that protection with a third-party tool set. So it might be Mimecast or Spam Titan or whatever that might look like. By upgrading to Business Premium, you get more AI-centric and intelligent spam filtering and anti-phishing protection on your email. So it will protect against all kinds of things like spam, malware, viruses, phishing attempts, and just general business email compromise with a degree of intelligence, far more so than what you get in the business standard license. It also offers you protection for other collaboration tools. So it's not just your email. So it will cover multiple tools within the 365 ecosystem. So things like Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, depending on your licensing. So it will catch threats via shared files as well. Obviously, it needs to be configured correctly. And again, we see clients come on board, they've got a business premium license, and it's just kind of thrown at the tenant, and it's kind of a hope for the best type approach. All of this stuff needs to be planned and implemented correctly with the correct catch policies. So it's as effective as it can be, and it's giving you that safety that you're looking for. Some of the other benefits of the advanced protections within Office 365 are it does real-time link scanning, also known as Microsoft Safe Links. So if you've got it enabled, you'll see if you've ever clicked an email, link in an email, you'll normally get a brief pause while it runs the safe links before presenting you with the output in a browser. It can also do attachment sandboxing and detonation. So it will open up any kind of attachments within a sandbox just to confirm whether or not they are legitimate and safe for you to use. It also does URL and QR code protection. So how does it work? How does Defender for Office 365 works? So it uses a multi-phase filtering stack for your incoming emails. So it looks at multiple parts of the email makeup. So it will look at the reputation of the sender's IP address, the domain, to check that it's not blacklisted or marked anywhere as unsafe, and if there's any kind of throttling sanctions that are in place against said domain. It will then run through and check the authentication. So it will check things like your SPF, your DKIM, and your DMARC records, just to make sure they're all in place and everything is correct as it should be. And that's good for things like impersonation and spoofing detection. It will then scan the content of the email. So it will scan for malware, it will check your attachments, and it will check any links. And then even after the mail has been delivered, it will continue to monitor for malicious links in case a link gets updated. Any attachments that may be hosted somewhere else that they could change the back end, we've seen that before. And you can also, from Defender for 365, run an auto purge. So if something is detected, I've worked with a client recently who, if somebody reports a potential phishing email, they can then update the record within the security portal in 365, and they can run an auto purge. So it'll automatically remove it from all of the tenant mailboxes. So rather than it sitting there or running a Teams chat to say, you know, just a heads up, we've had this phishing email, they can automate that process so it just gets removed from the mailbox. So it doesn't have to bother anyone else. And obviously it removes the risk to the business dramatically, or reduces the risk, I should say. So the benefits of running Defender for Office 365 is obviously it reduces the risk of email-borne attacks, because email still remains a primary vector phishing and malware. It offers better detection of sophisticated attacks, so things like zero-day malware and attachments, links that lead to phishing sites, impersonation of trusted domains and users. So you can quite a cool feature within Defender for 365 is you can pick, obviously you can enable impersonation protection for your users within the domain, but you can also enable impersonation protection for VIPs, which runs an even stricter policy against those select VIPs. So let's say you've got you know, the chief financial officer who's, you know, able to sign off large invoices or send payments, whatever that might be. You can put on enhanced protection for that user, so it checks it more strictly against the rule set. Obviously, like we said about Defender for Endpoint, it integrates within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, which is great because you get the single portal to manage, single pane of glass for all this stuff, and it all connects and works intelligently together. And also ties into things like the compliance aspect of it within Purview and all of that stuff too. It scales across all of the collaboration platforms, like we said, so it's not just Exchange mailboxes, also Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, so just say any threats within those. So in a nutshell, that kind of covers off Defender for 365.
Hey Dave, I was going to say, do you know, sorry Luke, I was going to say, you've onboarded a few clients in the last 2-3 months now. What have you seen with the setup when, basically, I remember one client specifically where they had the premium, but they were paying for an additional anti-spam filtering system. Can you explain a bit is that a common thing that you see, or is it?
Yeah, I've seen kind of both sides to it. So I will see some clients will come on board and they will have the business premium licenses, but all of the default policies are either turned off or set to their lowest priority. So they're not really having an effect. And they'll outsource the email protection to a third-party tool. So it'll be, there's no kind of right or wrong, but Mimecast, SpamTitan, whatever that might be. Obviously, there's a better margin for the MSP. There's obviously more to manage for the MSP, and you can question whether or not that's being done. And I've also seen it the other way, where some clients have both on, like fully set to manage both aspects of it, and it's kind of a belt and braces approach. So they'll go, okay, so I've got Mimecast doing it, but I'm also going to have 365 doing it. So if it gets through Mimecast for whatever reason, 365 will catch it. In those instances, generally, if it fails at Mimecast, it's probably going to fail at 365 as well. So it is probably a belt and braces approach. Whether or not it works or it's the right approach, you could argue either way. So yeah, I've kind of seen it from both aspects. I think the worst is when, you know, you have business premium license, the client's under the illusion that spam filtering is enabled and they're protected, and then you go in and the policies aren't even enabled or set up correctly. I think that is probably the worst. But I've kind of seen all three instances.
Yeah, I find the same when you go into certain settings and you find that it's just out of the box. Like example was you onboard a client and then they've got Windows Defender for Endpoint, the antivirus, but EDR is not enabled, even though they have the feature there.
Yeah.
So I see the same thing. Sorry, Luke, you were saying something.
That's
Cut
right.
you off.
Yeah, I think the big standout for me is, like, typically businesses will just implement a spam filter and then they'll sort of think, okay, well, that's fine. We've got antivirus, we've got a spam filter, like, we're done. Like, what more can we really do? But I mean, Defender for Office 365, the fact that it's actually protecting like Teams and SharePoint and all these features that you're using already within the Microsoft ecosystem, like, does that ever actually come customers' minds for you guys that actually like there is more to protect than just your email and your endpoints. You know, there's all this stuff going on in the background. And I think that's quite a prominent feature for Defender for Office 365. I'm not sure if you agree, because you know, is there really one product that sort of does across all the different channels and features? You know.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is you need, it's not just one product fits all. So you've got the EDR element, you've got the Office 365 element. We're also going to be talking about conditional access policies, which all interlinks with each other. So you can have an EDR, great, you can have Office 365 for your kind of your email collaboration. But then what about the systems behind that? So you've got conditional access policies where you have strict policies, say, if you don't hit this certain criteria, you cannot do X, whatever that will be. Obviously, you'll be touching upon that in a minute. So yes, it is not configured properly that we've seen, which is very common, by the way. And the main reason for it being common is because, as you know, IT changes so quick at a rapid pace. If you're not on top of it with actively learning, doing exams, you'll get far behind it. If I'm out of it for more than a year, it's gone. I need to start going back to the drawing board again and start revising again. It moves that quickly. And I think with people selling third-party antiviruses or anti-spam, because they've been working with those last X amount of years, they're so familiar with it, why change? From their perspective, why change? It could either be a monetary value, oh, we make X out margin on this, or it could also be, we don't have the skill set to do this, so let's just concentrate on what we know best, which will be whatever the products they sell. But do look at other features within 365. Like I said, conditional access policies, in-tune policies, all these additional features that are just, we're only covering a small section of it. So it's just, yeah, there's more than just one or two features that you need to look into.
I think it just pushes the responsibility away a little bit in terms of you can hand it over to a third-party spam filter, or you can go third-party for antivirus as well, and ultimately you're sort of saying, well, they sort of deal with it, they'll deal with the configuration, making sure it's actually working, and like internally for a managed service provider, you don't actually need to have that skill set to manage the product, like being sort of quite honest about it. We'll jump sort of into a bit about conditional access now, which Drag sort of kindly touched upon a little bit. Conditional access is very powerful. It's potentially a very strong reason for pushing towards business premium. And we see a lot of clients that when we talk to them about conditional access are like, well, we definitely need to have this implemented to protect our environment. So by default, you can use something called Microsoft Security defaults, which effectively just sort of puts MFA onto accounts, and it does sort of what Microsoft see as the defaults. There's no real control of it. What conditional access is it's essentially like a policy engine for Microsoft Entra ID. So that's where all your accounts lie within the 365 ecosystem and your devices. And what it does is it takes signals from users' devices, locations, what application they're accessing, is their device in a risky state at the moment. And what it will do is it will enforce access controls accordingly. So some of the key things it does is a bit like a if this, then do that, or if you try and access resource X, then you should do action Y. So these signals are used with like users or groups or device states. So it could be, is the device hybrid joined, which we'll talk a little bit about later on in terms of where its enrollment is. Is it marked as compliant? So has it got everything that we've set as the compliance policies? So is it encrypted? As a prime example, you can add these controls in as a condition before you can access certain apps and certain resources within Microsoft 365. So a control that could be enforced, which is a really common one and should be proactively being pushed upon the apps that you do use within 365 is MFA. So making sure that when someone does go to access your SharePoint, that even if they already are signed in, that you force MFA again just to prove that they are who they say they are. You could look to implement to make sure that the devices are compliant. So do they meet all your compliance policies, such as I touched on? Are they encrypted? Is the antivirus up to date? And you can block access and require certain approvals depending on what sort of controls you have in place. You can also sort of implement session control limits. So you can sort of say, well, how long before a session is, it's already granted, how long should we re-authenticate to make sure that, the person who's accessing that resource is who needs to access it. So essentially how it works is it happens after the first form of authentication. So you'll go onto your 365 login page and you'll type in your password. And at that point there, after your first factor authentication, the policy will trigger depending on what resource you're trying to access. So it's going to collect your session data, so your user, your device, your location, the app that you're using to access that resource, and it's going to evaluate some conditions. So it's going to then enforce the required controls. So MFA, block, make sure that it's a compliant device based on the policies that you've set. And it integrates really well with device management, such as Microsoft Intune, which we'll touch upon a little bit later, to check that a device is compliant before granting access. So conditional access really gives you granular control over how users are accessing resources within your Microsoft 365 environment. So it's going to give you better security with context awareness access. So you are going to be able to enforce stricter controls when a user is high risk. So for instance, if they're signing in abroad or from an unmanaged device, if they're signing in potentially from a managed device, do you potentially relax those controls? I mean, it's all up for debate, and it comes down to internally how you sort of see your cybersecurity. By having conditional access in place, it is going to reduce your attack surface. You are going to block things like legacy authentication, making sure that MFA is in place when you're accessing certain resources. So it really does sort of adopt that sort of zero trust access model, because every time you try and access something within the Microsoft ecosystem, that attempt is being evaluated. So you should never trust, you should always verify. And that's using the signals that you're getting as part of your conditional access policies. So you should really look at implementing conditional access, especially if you have users that are using BYOD, so bring your own devices, remote working, if you have multiple devices accessing resources from different locations, and even like SaaS products. So, if you use single sign-on, you can control how people access those cloud solutions and make sure that there is MFA enforced. I mean, we're in 2025 now, so it's quite concerning if you are using a SaaS product or a cloud product that doesn't allow you to configure multi-factor authentication. If that's not the case and you can pass that authentication through to Microsoft 365, then great, you can use your conditional access policies, because you may only want a managed device accessing that application, for instance. So I think I've touched upon conditional access there in terms of the core aspects of it. I mean, David Drag, I'm sure you see it a lot out in the sort of amongst our client base and speaking to prospects, that people are relying a lot on security defaults and don't sort of take this level of control, which they should be taking to access their applications and resources within 365.
Yeah.
Right?
So I was going to ask you actually, Luke, I've been asked this by like other people with conditional access. Is it enabled by default? If you've got Office 365 Premium, is it enabled by default?
So there are certain policies which are in place by default from Microsoft 365. So they will implement some default policies, but to get the most out of conditional access, you should be looking at creating your own policies. And what you can do as part of these policies, rather than sort of causing disruption to end users, you can set them to like reports only. So for instance, you can say, I want to force multi-factor authentication every time someone tries to access X, for instance. And you can report on that, and you can see how many times that would have been triggered and the type of either disruption it may cause or how many people are actually accessing that application. So I'd always say that you can take Microsoft defaults with a bit of a pinch of salt, really, because you should be looking at your environment, how you do IT, and making business decisions on the controls that you want to put in place for users accessing your business data. Is incredibly important.
Yeah, I was saying with the security defaults, they are literally the minimum security defaults that you would need. Conditional access does go way above and beyond, like Luke touched upon. It goes I want to have strict rules to say this machine has to be compliant, which I'll talk about roughly with Intune. But if it doesn't meet certain strict criteria, that it hasn't been patched within the last 14 days, or if it's been jailbroken, wherever it might be, you can have strict rules to say conditional access policies. If this user is outside of the UK, he is not allowed, or she is not allowed to access this area. Security defaults does not allow that. Security defaults is the minimum standard. If you want the conditional access, unfortunately, you have to pay for that specific feature, and it comes part of Office 365 premium package. So when you go for the premium, again, you can get conditional access part of it, as well as the other things we talked about, and we will talk about Intune as well in a minute. But yeah, that is, Luke, as well, another great feature of conditional access.
It goes amiss, you buy the business premium licensing and you start using some of the tools, maybe like Endpoint and Office, Office 365 protection that we sort of mentioned already. But if you've got this feature, why are you not using it? It just gives you so much more of control as a business and how people are accessing your data. It's just, it goes amiss, and people rely on these defaults, and it's really, you're paying.
What would you put that down to? I put it down to complexity. That's probably why it's not configured. It's so common when we do, honestly, onboard clients. It's not always, but 9 times out of 10, it is not configured. Just because it's like, if I configure it and I cause so much issue, that client's not going to be very happy. That's the first reason why they probably don't do it. Do you agree with that, Luke?
100%. Yeah. I think it comes down to MSPs sort of being a little bit scared on sort of rocking the boat and, causing a little bit of disruption. But, if it's configured by an expert team, that disruption is minimal. You do start off with reporting. You look at how many users this is going to impact. And I think, to be honest, managed service providers just don't want the hassle, don't want the extra work. They just think, well, we'll leave it on the defaults. Our clients don't even know this even exists. And also it comes down to that skill set of the managed service provider. Do they know how to configure these policies effectively and deploy them in a manner that's not going to disrupt day-to-day operations for that business? And unfortunately, the honest answer is a lot of providers don't, I'm afraid. But
same as well,
it's just
Intune as well.
Like, got used. Yeah.
I was like, another example would be Intune. So now, obviously, we're talking about Intune and like device and app management. So, which ties nicely into this. So another feature of premium is Intune. Again, they pay for the product, and it's so common they don't use Intune. So, what is Intune? So, it comes part of Office 365 Business Premium, and it includes like full device and application management through Intune. Okay, so this allows your organization to configure and manage endpoint devices. So like Windows, Mac OS, iOS, you've got Android devices. Like traditionally, if it's like a Windows device or a Mac to a certain degree, you would manage it through a traditional on-premise domain controller with group policy. If it's a Windows, it works seamlessly. If it's not Windows, not great. So Intune is what fits all of those other features. So if you've got Linux, you've got Mac, you've got Windows, you can still Intune on those devices. Before that was only group policy. So there's so many limitations before when it was only group policy, but now it's bundled in part of premium. Again, we see it so commonly, it's not being used. It's only being used from a MAM perspective, MAM, which we'll touch upon later, but not for endpoint devices. So you've got MDM and MAM for MAM. We see it for deployment of devices, but not the other way around. So the key capabilities would be enrolling corporate devices or personal devices, so bring your own devices into management. So an example would be a user wants to connect their personal phone to their emails. So that would rely on them being enrolled into the 365 Intune area. So when they collect their emails, it's isolated within Intune. So they use specific apps like Outlook, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, wherever it might be. If it's out of those apps, it won't work. So it does work great with those bring your own devices. So we see a lot of end users using their personal devices, which is common. So this is where you can actually instruct like security policies such as encryption. The phone has to be encrypted, i.e., it has to have a PIN or a password requirement on there. You have to make sure the iOS or the operating system is up to date. and you can pull these kind of information from the portal. You have all these bring your own devices. It only gets limited information because it is their personal device at the end of the day. But you can say, if it doesn't hit this specific rule, part of conditional access as well, you cannot access our data, even if it's your own personal device, and it will give you a message. Your iOS is not up to date, please update, and then restart your phone, and then you can access corporate data. So great feature. So management application. So another good feature of Microsoft Intune is where you could deploy application business apps to all devices. So it could be certain apps you want to block, or you want to control how they are handled. So you could say, if a user uses Outlook on their personal phone, for instance, they cannot copy and paste data between Outlook and their native Android mail app or Apple mail app. So those kind of features you have more control over. If you don't have that, it's like, I hope they don't use my data. You're just only hoping, because you don't have any restrictions or any security measures in place. So restricted access to company resource, unless it does meet certain kind of security requirements. Like I said, if the phone hasn't got a PIN number on it, it won't allow it. It says, you don't have a PIN number on it, so I'm not going to allow you access to corporate data. Activate a PIN. And you can dictate that security measure to say it has to have 6 characters long, and you can't use the same number twice. Some people might do their date of birth and then 00 at the end, or vice versa, 00 and then date of birth. That is, you put whatever rules in place. So that is another good feature of it. It also supports hybrid and remote workers. So the policy is applied no matter where they are. So users can work from home, they can be in the office. The policy is applied wherever they are in the world. It doesn't matter. So we get asked, like, how does it actually work? So with the device, when they're enrolled into Intune, they appear in the management portal within it. And from that, you can see all your devices. You can say, okay, from a compliance perspective, how many devices are not encrypted? How many devices are jailbroken or rooted? How many are running unsupported operating system, or how many are running supported? You can see a holistic view of all your devices that are accessing your corporate data. If you don't have this in place, then you don't know. It's very hard to find out how your data is being managed from like remote users or bring your own device and handsets. Okay, so you can create app protection for like corporate devices. Like I said, when you're trying to move data between Microsoft Teams or OneDrive, and you're trying to save it onto your phone, okay, and so bring your own device phone, that can be blocked with Intune and conditional access policies. So you can copy within the ecosystem. So if you're copying from, say, OneDrive to Microsoft Teams or to SharePoint, that's all fine. But as soon as you try to go out of it, it won't work. The benefits, so the benefits, it reduces the risk and it stops unmanaged and insecure compromised devices. So if it is jailbroken or it's at risk, it will stop it from being accessing corporate data, okay? It has stronger remote work protection, so it applies security updates constantly, wherever the user is in the office or outside the office. It does data protection anywhere they can be, so you can also wipe their data. So say someone was to leave or they lost their phone, you can remote wipe that data. There's only that data that's controlled by the company, like Outlook. But at the moment, if clients just use their normal Android or Apple mail app, and as soon as they leave, they still have historical data. So another good feature is to make sure you do use Intune, okay? And it supervises IT management, so you can do app deployments. You also link it with Autopilot, which Dave will touch upon in a minute. So when you install an Intune on the device, it will set off a set of tasks: install this, encrypt, install BitLocker, do X, Y, Z, install these specific applications. All that simplifies IT management, which is a great product. So it also does, like I said, zero trust as well. So access is granted only when identity, as Luke touched upon, device and conditions are trusted. So if they're not trusted, it won't allow it. So zero trust basically means we don't automatically trust the user or the device. Access is only granted when identity and is verified. So when it's verified and secure, then it'll basically allow access to it. And it's better user experience. We find that once you have all this set up, when a new person joins, it's the same all the way through. They don't have any. They have the same consistency every single time. But yeah, autopilot, another great feature, ties in with Intune as well.
That was great, Drag. I think that was a real sort of good insight into Intune specifically. And I think to sort of summarize that businesses, traditionally manage devices via on-premise servers and group policy and Active Directory, but Intune is the way that you can manage your devices via the cloud and not have to worry about having on-premise legacy traditional servers to do that for you. There's no need for a VPN. So some businesses are probably in that sort of position at the moment where they've got their on-premise servers, they're looking to decommission it. And to summarize, you should be looking at creating like a hybrid model so that any new machines over the next sort of, let's say you've got 2 years left before you need to sort of decommission your on-premise domain controller, you should be looking at moving those machines to Intune and putting all those configurations and policies in place so that in 2 years' time, there's only a handful of machines that are sort of left behind that you then need to enroll in Intune. It just removes that reliance on that old hardware. But I appreciate we're getting sort of a little bit sort of run for time at the moment. But David, I think you wanted to sort of touch a little bit upon autopilot, I guess, and the benefits that it's going to bring in line with Intune.
Yeah, exactly. So much like you touched upon, obviously Intune being the direct replacement for group policy, the world has changed. Obviously, users are spread out near and far. There's less and less requirement to work in fixed offices anymore. And it's made kind of the provision and deployment of hardware really, really difficult for IT managers and IT staff generally. And one of my favorite features, and the one that always kind of blows people's minds if they've never seen it before, is autopilot. And autopilot, you're chuckling.
It's true. Yeah. It saves our I was going to say an example. It's just occurred to his head. Autopilot. Look, Eddie, you carry on. I just laughed about something about autopilot.
Yeah. So autopilot effectively allows you. It's hardware agnostic. So most hardware vendors or big box hardware vendors like Dell, HP, Lenovo. Effectively, you can order your end user device directly from them. They connect up to your tenant ahead of time, so you will connect up a trust with Dell or Lenovo or HP, and then when you order it, you get something called a hardware hash that is put into your tenant. And what you will do with autopilot is you will set up a bunch of rules and requirements for deployment. So you can bypass being hands-on with that end user device. You can ship it directly from vendor, directly to the end user, wherever they are in the world. And as soon as they physically get their device and get hands-on with it, they will sign in with their username and password, and it will run autopilot. It will run through its explicitly set out rules and processes. So it will be things like enter join it, download all of these applications, and it will be run these configuration profiles against the device. So make sure you enforce device encryption, which again brings in all the Intune policies, which we've previously spoken about. It just makes it a much neater and nicer process. I've got clients in South America, Germany, Africa, and it means that we can order devices from the device vendors in those respective countries, which means your users get the correct keyboard for the locale they're in, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but for some users it can really impact on the work they're doing. And it just makes the whole process a lot slicker and more quick and quicker. It also removes any kind of discrepancies. So if you've got the same user doing a repeat process, human error happens, and sometimes, a piece of software might be forgotten. And especially with new users, when you bring a new user on board, it's really important that they get a great first hands-on experience with your IT department, because that has a long-lasting impact on the way they view your IT department, whether you're an MSP or someone internal. I think I know the story that Drag was chuckling about, and that's
tell that story, Dave.
It's the one I'm thinking about. So we had a client who did a user review within the organization, and we got back a list of users saying, please go ahead and delete these users. And in doing so, it also wiped the devices, because that was the policies and profiles that were set up. I had a panic-stricken phone call about half an hour later to say that the user was based in Germany and it had wiped their laptop. And normally that would be a oh my god moment, as how are we going to rebuild a laptop in Germany that we've got no access to? But again, autopilot was there, reinstated the license, got the user to sign in, and within the hour, I'd probably say it's quicker than that. Within 30 minutes, they're back up and running. Everything's backed up to OneDrive. The device just rebuilt itself, so it's great. It can really save your bacon in a pinch in that kind of circumstance. But yeah, we did all chuckle about that. I think there were about 2 users affected, I think, in the end.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah,
That's so powerful, though, isn't it? Gone are the days of setting up machines manually.
Yes, yeah, it's a great tool.
I think that's the thing that stands out. Like, a user could literally be anywhere in the world, right? And as long as that device is, we've got the hardware hashes and we've enrolled it in their Intune and autopilot, they just power up the device, sign in, and it installs. It's just ready to go straight away. And I think what a lot of businesses that maybe on today's webinar may sort of resonate with is that when they buy a new machine, it goes to their managed service provider. They then set it up, and there is always going to be things missed. It's human error. And then inevitably 2 weeks later, you drop them an email and say, how's the device setup going? And then that sort of nudges them to sort of finish it off. Talking from our own experience, we now buy the laptops and ship them straight to the clients and straight to the end users because autopilot is there and it does the setup for us. And obviously, from a managed service provider's perspective, you do need to maintain autopilot and make sure Intune and all those policies are in place. But the overall result is that end user experience is far nicer and far quicker than sending a laptop here, getting a laptop sent there, and then this is missing. It's just works so well. So and it's nice that David was able to share a real world example of where it's happened to us. I appreciate we're sort of getting towards the end of today's webinar, and there's just sort of one final point that we want to talk about. And there's never enough time to go into all of these areas in immense sort of detail. So hopefully what we've sort of talked about today has been enough to sort of give you enough information to go away, and we're happy to talk about and have a conversation separately if needs be, or do your own research. But the final area is just to talk a little bit about mobile application management, or as we sort of alluded to earlier on in the webinar, it's called MAM. So essentially, it's already included in your business premium licensing, and it protects your data at application level instead of device level. So that's the really crucial thing there. You're controlling your data at app level than a device level. And this means that there's apps like Outlook, Teams, Word that you're in control of on a user's personal device, so BYOD. Typically you see, and I've got it on my phone, my work email. I don't necessarily, it's not owned by the business. It doesn't need to be enrolled into the corporate environment, but it needs to have protection in place to make sure that BZB's corporate data doesn't leave the Outlook app and doesn't go anywhere else on my phone. And if I was to leave the organization, for instance, that data can be removed from that app. So you don't have to wipe the whole phone. You just force remove the email or the business data from that application within someone's phone. So, it's about applying security policies essentially to business apps, not a whole device. It's great for BYOD. It gets, you're not invading a user's personal privacy. I'm pretty sure 70% of businesses, end users, have their emails or Microsoft Teams on their personal phones. Typically, we're gone are the days now where you'd have a work phone and a personal phone, because carrying these two massive phones in your back pocket is probably quite a nuisance now. They're considerably smaller a few years ago. You can add policies as part of MAM, and this is quite a big one, and maybe frustrates me at times, but I know it's there for a reason. You can set things up like restricting usage for copy and paste or screen capture, or like screenshots. So you can't copy and paste information outside of the Outlook app, which is really important. So it keeps your data within that application, so it maintains your compliance. How it works, all it is, users sign into approved apps, so Outlook, Teams, OneDrive, with their work credentials, and then Intune applies an app protection policy, which defines how the organization's data is handled. So It can enforce things like you need to have a PIN to enter the app to access your data, or use a biometric requirement such as fingerprints. It will encrypt your data inside the app. It makes sure also that you're only approving certain apps to be able to access your data. So you will enforce and say that the only client that can use the only email client is Outlook. It's not Mail. It's not other solutions. You're maintaining that we want to keep our data within the Microsoft ecosystem. And most importantly, it just stops people from saving stuff to their personal storage locations. You know, stuff gets left here and there, and you don't know where that could end up. So ultimately, why it matters is, well, users keep their own personal devices outside of the business control, but the business has some element of control within that app specifically to protect its data. It's going to reduce your risk of data leaks. You know, people can't copy and paste that side to their personal devices. It's great for contractors. It's great for temporary staff that don't want their device fully enrolled. It's simple and it's fast deployment. You know, it really is that zero trust model that you should be adopting within your environment to protect your data. So I think that sort of summarizes MAM. Drag's just going to quickly touch upon what we're seeing in the market at the moment, and then we'll sort of summarize and finish today's webinar.
One of the examples was MAM's good for not being able to copy and paste, but sometimes when you've got a chat window on Teams on your phone and they sent you a link that you want to open up on your phone, then you're like, oh, I can't copy and paste it. That's the only drawback. But I see the bigger picture of it. But anyway, that's my only kind of 2 pence to that. So what we see in the market, so businesses are not fully utilizing the potential of the premium licenses. So whether they have the premium license or whether they want to move over to it, they're not seeing the full potential of what it can do to their business. This could be many reasons. So it could be the MSP is just selling third-party products, which they just get their own kind of kickback on. Or it could just be that they're struggling to keep up with technology. As I said, if you're not in it for more than a year and you're out of it, you have to relearn again. So the only way you can keep on top of it is constantly doing exams, studying. That's the only way you keep on top of everything. So yeah, so that's what I find is the fact that they're struggling to kind of keep up with their ecosystem. Do you agree, Dave?
Yeah, exactly that. It's a constantly evolving platform, like you say. Not just the name changes, but it's still the changes under the bonnet as well that you have to keep on top of. It moves very quick.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for joining. I'm not sure if anyone else is having issues.
I mean, it looks like we may have lost Drag.
Oh, you're back.
But I'm still with you, David. Oh, Drag's back now.
Yeah, cool. So sorry.
I'm back.
Thanks for joining, everyone. I'm hoping this hour has given you a good overview of what Business Premium offers and can offer to your business. You know, in essence, Business Premium is a full security and device management suite, along with all of your Office apps and email. And it helps organizations move from any kind of on-premise systems to secure cloud-based infrastructure. Like we've covered in today's webinar, the key tools are things like Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365, your conditional access, your Intune deployment, autopilot, my favorite, and mobile application management. These features, when configured correctly, can significantly reduce risk from phishing, ransomware, and account breaches. Your conditional access and Intune supports a modern zero trust approach. Can protect access based on user, device, and risk. Your autopilot streamlines device deployment and creates a consistent and secure setup for all users. And as Drag touched upon, MAM protects business data on personal devices without impacting on user privacy. Business Premium can replace many third-party tools, lowering complexity and improving integration. And as we see across the clients we onboard, many organizations are still underusing the features because MSPs promote third-party alternatives, or in the case of in-house teams, they just lack expertise and experience in configuring these options. When implemented by a skilled Microsoft partner, Business Premium can deliver stronger security, simpler management, and offer better value to your organization.
Oh, I think that sort of brings us to 1 o'clock, give or take a minute or two, running over. But thanks ever so much for everyone joining today's hiveCONNECT webinar. We'd love to know from you what you like to see from these webinars going forward. Is there any sort of specific areas that you'd like us to talk about? So if you do want to reach out to us, maybe via email, it's hello@bzbit.co.uk, or drop us a message on LinkedIn. We'd love to know what you'd like to see more of as part of these webinars. And also, if you do want to touch base with us and have a discussion about how you manage your environment at the moment and how you could be getting more out of your business premium licensing, then we'd always love to have a conversation and give you some advice. This isn't a hard sell, it's just advice to businesses and making sure that they're fully getting the most out of their business premium licensing. So thanks ever so much for
Thank you.
everyone joining today. So thanks all.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cheers.